Vincent Moretti knew something was wrong before the news reached his ears. He felt it in the way his phone stopped ringing, in the unnatural pause of the city outside his office window, in the silence that only appeared when powerful people were afraid to speak. He stood alone on the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking Washington, D.C., watching traffic crawl like obedient ants below. When the television behind him finally broke the quiet, the words hit him not like thunder, but like ice sinking slowly into his chest. The president's daughter has been kidnapped. The screen showed her photograph, bright and composed, taken less than 12 hours earlier at a charity event. She looked untouched by danger, smiling as if the world had never learned how cruel it could be. Commentators spoke rapidly, speculating, filling the void with noise. Vincent did not turn around. He didn't need to see her face again to know what detail would undo him. He had already noticed it in the corner of his vision, reflected faintly in the glass of the window. Around her neck was a small silver pendant. To anyone else, it was nothing. Cheap, old-fashioned, forgettable. To Vincent, it was a ghost. His breath slowed as memories he had buried for more than 2 decades began to claw their way back. He had held that pendant once. He had given its twin away on a rain-soaked night to a woman who begged him to disappear for the sake of a child he was never supposed to know. But before we continue, I want to make a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and are enjoying my stories, and comment below which city you're watching us from. Now let's continue. Vincent Moretti was not a man the public feared. That was intentional. In headlines, he was described as a logistics magnate, a donor to hospitals, a quiet supporter of political campaigns on both sides of the aisle. He wore tailored suits, spoke calmly, and never raised his voice. In rooms without cameras, his name carried a different weight. He controlled shipping routes that fed entire cities. He knew which laws were enforced and which were theater. He did not need violence often, because fear worked better when it was precise. He had built his empire on one unbreakable rule: never let the past bleed into the present. The pendant shattered that rule in a heartbeat. Frank Delaney entered the office without knocking, something only one man on Earth was allowed to do. Frank had been with Vincent since the early days, back when survival depended more on instinct than money. He was tall, grey-haired, and walked with the stiffness of someone who had learned too late that damage accumulates. "You're watching the same thing I am," Frank said, not a question. Vincent finally turned from the window. His expression was controlled, but his eyes were darker than Frank had ever seen them. "Run every channel," Vincent said. "I want names, locations, handlers. I want to know who approved this and who hesitated." Frank hesitated instead. "This isn't just a kidnapping," he said carefully. "This is federal ground. Secret Service, intelligence agencies. You get involved and you're stepping into daylight." Vincent nodded once. "They already stepped into mine." Within minutes, Vincent's private network activated. Dock supervisors checked manifests that didn't officially exist. Drivers remembered conversations they'd pretended to forget. Small-time traffickers suddenly found themselves answering questions they didn't understand yet. Information arrived in fragments, but a pattern emerged quickly. A splinter group tied to a major drug corridor had gone rogue. They weren't trying to disappear. They wanted attention, protection, power, and leverage. A secure message arrived on a device that Vincent never used unless the situation was irreversible. "She's alive. For now." Vincent closed his eyes briefly, not in relief but in calculation. Alive meant time. Time meant mistakes. And mistakes were where men like him operated best. He dismissed Frank and locked the office door. From a hidden compartment in his desk, he removed a small cloth-wrapped object. His hands were steady as he unwrapped it, revealing the matching silver pendant. Identical. Incomplete. A promise split in half. The memory returned with brutal clarity. A cheap motel outside Baltimore. Rain pounding the window. A woman sitting on the bed, one hand protectively over her stomach, telling him that loving someone like him came with a price she refused to make a child pay. He had agreed to leave. He had told himself it was mercy. Now that mercy had led straight to this. The phone rang. No caller ID. "You're quicker than expected," a man said, his voice relaxed, confident. "That tells me you care." Vincent spoke evenly. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." A soft laugh on the other end. Everything belongs to someone, that's the problem. If she's harmed, Vincent said, you won't live long enough to regret it. Silence followed. Not fear. Assessment. Come alone, the man finally said. Tonight, bring something worth trading. The line went dead. Vincent stood motionless for a long moment. He knew it was a trap. He also knew he would walk into it without hesitation. Some debts could not be paid with money. Some sins demanded presence. He adjusted his jacket, slipped the pendant into his pocket, and glanced once more at the paused image on the television. The girl's smile no longer looked untouched. It looked borrowed, temporary. As Vincent Moretti stepped out into the night, one truth settled heavily in his chest. For the first time in his life, power was not what he needed. He needed his daughter. The warehouse sat at the edge of the Anacostia River like a forgotten scar, its brick walls cracked, its windows blacked out with grime and plywood. Vincent Moretti arrived alone, just as instructed. No driver, no visible security. His car rolled to a stop under a single flickering light, and when he stepped out, the cold night air cut through his suit like a reminder that this was no longer a negotiation conducted from behind glass and distance. He walked forward at an unhurried pace, hands relaxed at his sides. Men who survived in Vincent's world learned early that confidence was louder than weapons. The massive metal door groaned open before he reached it, revealing a cavernous interior lit by harsh white lamps. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and deliberate. 4 men waited inside, armed, nervous, too alert. Vincent catalogued them instantly. The one leaning against a crate with the rifle held a little too tight was new. The man by the stairs avoided eye contact, which meant he was already thinking about escape. The third was calm but sweating, aware of the imbalance in the room even if he didn't understand it yet. The 4th man stepped forward. Miguel Rojas, mid-30s, well-groomed. Smart eyes that missed nothing except their own limits. He wore a leather jacket instead of tactical gear, a statement meant to project authority. Vincent recognized the type immediately. Ambitious men were always the most dangerous, especially when they believed the moment belonged to them. You came alone, Miguel said, and that was wise. Vincent stopped a few feet away, his posture neutral, his gaze steady. You wanted to talk, he replied. I'm listening. Miguel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Most people don't walk into rooms like this without fear. Fear wastes time, Vincent said, and time is what you're running out of. Miguel chuckled softly and gestured toward a large monitor mounted on the far wall. The screen flickered, then stabilized. The image that appeared tightened something deep in Vincent's chest. The president's daughter sat on a thin mattress in what looked like a converted storage room. Her wrists were bound, but not brutally. Her posture was upright, defiant. A small bruise colored her cheek, fresh enough to sting. Around her neck, unmistakable even through the grainy feed, hung the silver pendant. Vincent did not react. He had learned long ago that men like Miguel watched faces more closely than words. She's alive, Miguel said, satisfaction lacing his voice. Comfortable, considering the circumstances. Vincent nodded slowly. You've made your point. Miguel stepped closer. You know why we took her. You took her because you wanted leverage, Vincent said, and because you thought visibility would protect you. Miguel raised an eyebrow. You don't think it will? I think it will get you killed faster, Vincent replied, just not by the people you expect. Miguel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He recovered quickly. We're not amateurs, he said. This wasn't emotional. This was strategic. Vincent tilted his head slightly. Then you miscalculated. Miguel folded his arms. We want safe passage, distribution protection, your ports, your routes. In return, the girl goes home. Vincent's eyes hardened. And after that? Miguel shrugged. After that? Business. That's where you're wrong, Vincent said quietly. There is no after. Miguel laughed, louder this time, as if mocking the idea. You're not in a position to dictate terms. Vincent took a step forward. The men with guns stiffened, fingers tightening on triggers. Vincent stopped again, unbothered. You think this is about money, Vincent said, or power, or territory. It's not. You crossed a line you didn't know existed. Miguel studied him now, more carefully. You're invested, he said. That's useful. It's fatal, Vincent corrected. For you. Miguel gestured toward the screen. Every hour we don't have a deal, her situation gets worse. Vincent finally looked directly at the image of the girl. She lifted her chin slightly, eyes burning with anger rather than fear. For a brief moment, their gazes aligned through the camera. Something passed between them. Recognition without understanding. Vincent turned back to Miguel. "You won't touch her," he said, "because if you do, there will be nothing left to bargain with." Miguel's jaw tightened. "You don't control us." Vincent's voice dropped, calm and precise. "I control the routes you use without realizing it, the drivers you trust, the warehouses you think are secure. Right now your phones are being mirrored, your accounts flagged, your allies questioned by people who don't know your names yet." Miguel's smile disappeared. "You're bluffing," he said. Vincent shook his head. "No, I'm informing you." One of Miguel's men shifted uneasily. Another glanced toward the door. Miguel exhaled slowly. "Then why are you here?" Vincent stepped closer again, close enough that Miguel could see the reflection of the lights in his eyes. "Because I want you to understand what comes next." Miguel swallowed. "Which is?" Vincent leaned in just enough for only Miguel to hear. "You give her back unharmed. You confess everything, and I decide whether you disappear quietly or loudly." Miguel pulled back, anger flashing across his face. "You don't scare me." Vincent straightened. "That's the tragedy," he said. "You should be terrified." He turned and walked toward the exit without waiting for permission. Behind him, Miguel shouted after him, "You walk away now, and she pays for it." Vincent did not stop. He paused only at the door, turning his head slightly. "No," he said. "You pay for it." Outside, the night air felt heavier. Vincent slid into his car and started the engine. His phone buzzed immediately. "They took the bait," Frank's voice said. "They're panicking." "Good," Vincent replied. "Begin phase 1. As he drove away from the warehouse, Vincent allowed himself one thought he could not suppress. For the first time, he wasn't dismantling an enemy for business. He was dismantling them for blood. The call reached the White House just after midnight, when exhaustion had begun to dull the sharp edges of authority. The president sat in the Oval Office with his jacket draped over the back of a chair, tie loosened, eyes red from hours of staring at screens that offered no answers. Advisors moved in and out quietly, carrying reports that all said the same thing in different ways, nothing yet. When the secure line rang, the room froze. Only 3 people in the world had access to that channel. The president lifted the receiver himself. "This line is secure," he said. "So am I," Vincent Moretti replied. The name hit the room like a dropped glass. Several advisors stiffened. One opened his mouth to object, then thought better of it. The president stood slowly, turning away from the others. "You have exactly 10 seconds to explain why you're calling me." "I know where your daughter is," Vincent said. The president closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, the anger was still there. But something else had joined it. Hope, dangerous and unwelcome. "So you don't make jokes like that," the president said. "I don't joke," Vincent replied. "I calculate." Silence stretched. The president gestured for the room to clear. Reluctantly, the advisors stepped back, though none of them went far. Power didn't trust silence. "You're telling me," the president said slowly, "that you've located her before my own agencies." "Yes. And you expect me to believe that without proof?" "You already do," Vincent said. "Because if I were lying, this call would serve no purpose." The president's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Vincent did not answer immediately. He sat in the back seat of his moving car, the city lights streaking past the tinted windows. This was the moment he had avoided for decades, the collision of 2 worlds he had kept carefully separate. "I want you to stay out of this," Vincent said. A bitter laugh escaped the president. "You're asking me to abandon my own daughter." "No," Vincent said calmly. "I'm asking you to let me bring her home." The president's voice dropped. "You don't have the authority." "I have the leverage," Vincent replied, "and I have access you don't." "Through criminal networks," the president snapped. "Through reality," Vincent corrected. "Your people are bound by rules. Mine are bound by consequences." The president turned back toward the windows, staring out at the dark lawn. "If you're wrong," he said. "If this goes bad." "It won't," Vincent said. "And if it does?" Vincent exhaled slowly. "Then you can destroy me afterward." That stopped him. The president turned back toward the desk. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Don't insult me with patriotism." Vincent's grip tightened around the phone. This was the moment that would change everything. "Because she's mine," Vincent said. The silence that followed was not political. It was human. The president sank into his chair. the weight of the words pressing down on him. "Explain," he said finally. "There's nothing to explain," Vincent replied. "Not yet. Right now, there's only action." The president's voice was barely audible. "If you're lying—" "I'm not," Vincent said, "and you know it." Another pause, then quietly, "Bring her back." The line went dead. Vincent closed his eyes for a second, not in relief, but in preparation. The truth was out now. There was no returning to the carefully managed distance he had maintained his entire life. Whatever happened next would burn away the lies or expose them completely. His phone buzzed again. "Frank." "They've moved her," Frank said. "Twice in the last hour. They're scared." "Good," Vincent replied. "Fear makes men sloppy. They're heading north. Old industrial zone outside Wilmington." Vincent nodded. "I'm on my way." By the time Vincent reached the secondary command site, a nondescript townhouse with reinforced walls and no digital footprint, his people were already at work. Maps glowed on screens, live feeds updated in real time. Conversations were short, efficient, stripped of emotion, except Vincent's. He stood before the main monitor, watching a grainy image of the building where his daughter was being held. He studied the entrances, the windows, the surrounding streets. He memorized patterns. Guards rotated every 30 minutes. Cameras covered the obvious angles. Blind spots existed where arrogance had filled in the gaps. "She's holding up," one of his analysts said, refusing to cooperate. Vincent felt a strange, painful swell of pride. "That's my fault," he said quietly. "She doesn't know how to surrender." Frank stepped beside him. "This is still reversible," he said. "You can hand this to the feds." Vincent shook his head. "They'll storm the place. Someone panics. She gets hurt." "And you?" Frank asked. "What happens to you after this?" Vincent met his gaze. "That's irrelevant." Frank studied him for a long moment. "You're not just doing this to save her." Vincent didn't deny it. "I walked away once," he said. "I don't get to do it again." As dawn crept toward the horizon, Vincent finalized the plan. No explosions, no gunfire unless absolutely necessary. Disruption, confusion, extraction. The traffickers believed violence was power. Vincent would show them control was stronger. He glanced one last time at the screen. "Hold on," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "I'm coming." For the first time since the call, Vincent allowed himself to feel fear. Not of failure, not of exposure. Fear of what it would mean if he succeeded, because saving her would not erase the past. It would force him to face it. The operation began without announcement, without warning, and without mercy for mistakes. Vincent Moretti watched the live feeds from a darkened room 3 miles away from the target building, his face illuminated by shifting maps and infrared silhouettes. The warehouse in Wilmington looked ordinary from the outside, another abandoned structure left behind by a city that had learned to move on. Inside, it was anything but ordinary. Armed men, locked doors, cameras positioned with enough confidence to betray complacency. Vincent did not give orders loudly. He never had. His voice remained level, precise, as if he were discussing logistics instead of a life that mattered more to him than any empire he had ever built. "Cut external power," he said. The building went dark instantly. Inside the warehouse, confusion rippled. Backup generators kicked in late and unevenly, leaving entire corridors submerged in shadow. Vincent watched guards reach for radios that suddenly screamed with static. Their sense of control collapsed in seconds. "Jam communications," Vincent continued. On the monitors, men shouted at each other, mouths moving with no sound. One guard ran toward a door that refused to open. Another aimed his weapon at nothing, spinning in place as if the darkness itself were the enemy. Vincent leaned forward slightly. "Now." A side entrance opened from the inside, not forced, not broken, simply unlocked. The traffickers never understood how deeply their operation had already been compromised. Vincent's extraction team moved like a single organism. No shouting, no panic. They avoided confrontation whenever possible, slipping past confused guards, redirecting movement, sealing exits behind them. When force was unavoidable, it was fast, controlled, and silent. No unnecessary harm. No spectacle. Vincent did not watch every screen. He focused on one. The room. The room where she was being held. The door to that room stood at the end of a narrow corridor. A guard sat outside, distracted by the chaos unfolding elsewhere. He never saw the shadow behind him until it was over. The door opened. She stood up instantly. Vincent felt his chest tighten when her face filled the screen. She was thinner than in the photographs, her eyes sharper, older somehow. Fear had not broken her. It had sharpened her. The pendant still rested against her skin, steady even as her hands trembled. When the extraction lead stepped into view, she backed away, muscles tense, ready to fight or flee. "Easy," the man said softly. "We're here to take you home." She didn't answer. She didn't trust anyone anymore. Vincent understood that instinct intimately. "Vincent," he said into the mic, "she won't move." Vincent stood. "Give me audio," he said. The line opened. "My name is Vincent Moretti," he said, his voice steady despite the pressure crushing his ribs. "You don't know me yet, but I'm not here to hurt you." She froze. The sound of his voice did something the chaos hadn't. It cut through the noise. "You don't have to trust me," Vincent continued. "Just listen. The men who brought you here are losing control. You don't want to be here when they realize that." She swallowed. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back. "Who are you?" she asked. Vincent closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. "I'm the man who knows that pendant," he said. "And I'm the reason it matters." Her hand went instinctively to her chest. Silence stretched between them. "Step forward," Vincent said gently. "Please." She hesitated, then took one cautious step, then another. The extraction lead offered his hand. After a long moment, she took it. Vincent exhaled slowly as the team moved her out of the room. But the operation wasn't over. Miguel Rojas had not fled. On another screen, Vincent watched Miguel storm through the warehouse, shouting orders that no one could hear, rage replacing confidence. He spotted one of Vincent's men and charged, desperation overtaking strategy. "Do not engage," Vincent ordered. "Let him run." Miguel burst out a side exit just as Vincent's team sealed the perimeter. Sirens echoed in the distance. Not police, not yet, but the sound was enough to fracture what little discipline remained among the traffickers. Men scattered. Vehicles sped away only to stall when their engines cut out remotely. Miguel stumbled to a stop in the empty street, chest heaving, eyes wild. He looked up. Vincent stood across from him, alone. No guards, no weapons, just presence. Miguel laughed, breathless and unhinged. "You think this ends because you won tonight?" Vincent took a step closer. "This ended the moment you touched her." "You can't kill me," Miguel said. "You do, and everything burns." Vincent shook his head. "I'm not going to kill you." Miguel blinked. Confusion replaced defiance. "I'm going to let you live," Vincent continued. "And you're going to talk, to everyone, about everything." Miguel's face drained of color. "You don't get to disappear," Vincent said. "You don't get to be a myth. You're going to be an example." Miguel backed away slowly. "You think the government will protect you?" Vincent's eyes hardened. "No," he said. "I think they'll thank me." He turned away before Miguel could answer. Minutes later, Vincent stood inside a secured vehicle as the door closed behind her. She sat across from him, wrapped in a blanket, exhaustion finally breaking through her composure. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. There were no words that could safely cross the distance yet. The vehicle began to move. Vincent rested his hands on his knees, grounding himself in the moment. The rescue was complete. The danger was not. Because saving her was only the beginning. Now came the truth. Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in his place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. The first thing Vincent Moretti understood about survival was that rescue did not end danger. It simply changed its shape. The convoy moved through the outskirts of Wilmington under the cover of early morning fog. No sirens, no flashing lights. The absence of spectacle was intentional. Vincent watched the city slide past the tinted windows, his mind already shifting forward, calculating the consequences that would follow what he had just done. He had taken a president's daughter from the hands of drug traffickers without federal approval. That alone could shatter governments. But Vincent had not survived this long by fearing aftermaths. He faced them. She sat across from him in silence. Her posture was guarded, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes alert despite exhaustion. The blanket wrapped around her frame did little to hide the tension in her body. Vincent resisted the urge to speak. Words, spoken too early, could break things that had not yet formed. When the vehicle finally stopped at the safe house, She looked at him for the first time with something close to curiosity instead of fear. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet," Vincent replied. "Somewhere safe." She nodded, accepting the answer without trust. Trust had been stripped from her violently. Vincent recognized the look. He had worn it himself once. Inside, the house was warm, unremarkable by design. No luxury, no excess. Just clean rooms, neutral colors, and silence that didn't threaten. Medical personnel waited discreetly. She resisted at first, then allowed them to examine her, flinching only once when a hand brushed her wrist too suddenly. Vincent watched from the doorway, hands clasped behind his back. Every instinct in him screamed to move closer, to reassure her, to explain. He did none of it. Control mattered now more than comfort. Frank joined him quietly. "Miguel Rojas is in custody," he said. "Not officially yet." Vincent nodded. "Good. He's talking," Frank added, "to everyone who will listen." That was the punishment. Not death. Exposure. Vincent had dismantled Miguel's operation in hours, but the real damage was psychological. Every contact Miguel named, every route he confessed, every bribe he exposed, tightened the noose around dozens of men who had believed themselves untouchable. Miguel Rojas would not be remembered as a martyr. He would be remembered as a liability. By noon, federal agencies were flooding the region, picking up pieces Vincent had already arranged neatly for them. Anonymous tips, financial records. Location data. The traffickers fell fast, stunned by how completely their world had collapsed. The president received a secure message with one sentence: "She's safe." He did not respond immediately. Vincent expected that. The girl finished resting and emerged into the living area, her movements cautious but deliberate. Vincent was seated at the table, a cup of untouched coffee cooling in front of him. "You knew," she said suddenly. Vincent looked up. "Knew what?" "The pendant," she said. "You said you knew it." Vincent exhaled slowly. "Yes." She studied him, her eyes sharp, searching. "My mother told me it belonged to someone important, someone dangerous." Vincent did not flinch. She was right. "Are you him?" He met her gaze. This moment, he knew, would define everything that followed. "Yes," Vincent said. The word settled between them, heavy and undeniable. She did not react immediately. No tears, no anger, just a long, measured breath. "Then why weren't you there?" The question was not loud, it was not accusatory, it was worse, it was honest. Vincent leaned back slightly, allowing the weight of the truth to press into him. "Because I believed staying away would keep you alive," he said, "and because I was wrong." She absorbed that. "You're not sorry for what you are," she said. "You're sorry for what it cost." Vincent nodded. "Yes." She looked away, jaw tightening. "I grew up surrounded by power," she said. "Politics, security, lies dressed up as protection. I thought I knew danger." She looked back at him. "I didn't." Silence filled the room again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was fragile. Later that evening, the president arrived. No entourage, no cameras. Just a father who had aged 10 years in 24 hours. He stopped short when he saw Vincent, the two men locking eyes across the room. History and hatred and gratitude colliding in a single moment. "You," the president said quietly. Vincent stood. "Mr. President." The girl turned, surprise flashing across her face. "Dad." The president crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear again. Vincent looked away, giving them the moment he had forfeited long ago. When the president finally released her, he turned back to Vincent. "You should be in handcuffs," he said. "Yes," Vincent replied. "And yet," the president continued, "you brought her back when my entire government failed." Vincent did not respond. The president's voice dropped. "Is it true?" Vincent met his gaze. "Yes." The president closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the fury had softened into something more complex. "Then this isn't over," he said. "Not between us." "No," Vincent agreed. "It's not." That night, as the house settled into uneasy calm, Vincent stood alone on the back porch, staring into the darkness. He had won the battle. He had saved her. But the war he had avoided his entire life had finally found him, and it would demand everything he had left. Morning arrived without ceremony. No alarms, no sirens, no announcements. just pale light slipping through the windows of the safe house, touching the edges of a night that had changed too many lives to be forgotten easily. Vincent Moretti had not slept. He sat at the kitchen table where he had remained for hours, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, listening to the house breathe. For the first time in decades, there was nowhere else he needed to be. The girl emerged quietly, dressed in borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit her, but gave her a sense of normalcy she desperately needed. She paused when she saw Vincent, as if deciding whether to acknowledge him. Finally, she sat across from him, leaving just enough space to feel safe. "They're saying it was a miracle," she said. "On the news." Vincent nodded. "People like miracles. They don't ask who paid for them." She studied his face. "Did anyone die?" "No," Vincent said. "Not because of this." That answer seemed to matter to her. She exhaled, shoulders relaxing just slightly. "My name is Claire," she said after a moment. "You should know that." Vincent swallowed. He had known her name for years, whispered through carefully maintained distance, protected by ignorance he had once believed was kindness. Hearing it spoken directly to him felt different, real. "Claire," he repeated softly. She watched his reaction closely. "You don't get to decide when you're my father," she said, "but you did save my life." Vincent nodded again. "I'm not asking for anything," he replied. "Not forgiveness, not closeness." "What are you asking for?" she asked. "For time," Vincent said, "and honesty." She leaned back, considering. "We'll see." Frank entered quietly, carrying a tablet. His expression was tense. "We have movement," he said. "The fallout is accelerating." Vincent stood. Business inevitably returned. In the secure room, screens displayed news feeds, sealed indictments, anonymous leaks. Miguel Rojas's confession had ignited a chain reaction. Names surfaced. Accounts froze. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from donors whose money suddenly had fingerprints. "The Attorney General wants a conversation," Frank said. "So does Homeland Security." "And the President," Vincent added. Frank nodded. "He's under pressure." "So am I," Vincent replied. "The difference is I planned for it." But not all consequences were external. Vincent's own organization was fracturing under the strain. Longtime allies questioned his exposure. Rivals sensed weakness. Silence from Vincent, once reassuring, now felt dangerous to men who depended on predictability. A message arrived from an old partner in New York. One sentence: "You chose sentiment over structure." Vincent deleted it. That afternoon, Vincent met the president privately. No staff, no recording devices, just two men bound by a truth neither had wanted. "You've destabilized half the eastern seaboard," the president said bluntly. "Yes," Vincent replied. "And in doing so, I removed a cancer you've been pretending you couldn't see." The president's eyes narrowed. "You don't get to lecture me." "No," Vincent agreed, "but I get to finish what I started." "You're asking for immunity." "I'm offering resolution," Vincent said. "I will dismantle what remains, quietly, permanently. In exchange, you leave my daughter out of this." The president leaned back, conflicted. "And you?" Vincent met his gaze. "I'll disappear." Silence fell. "You're lying," the president said. Vincent shook his head. "I'm done." The president studied him carefully, seeing not the criminal the intelligence briefings described, but a man worn thin by the weight of decisions made too early and lived with too long. "You don't get absolution," the president said. "I'm not asking for it," Vincent replied. That evening, Vincent began the process of dismantling his own empire. Accounts transferred. Assets dissolved. Roots handed over to authorities through intermediaries who would never know his name. Men who had once called him boss now scrambled to secure their own futures. It was not dramatic. It was surgical. Claire watched from a distance as pieces of a world she had never known fell away. She didn't interfere. She didn't ask questions, but she noticed the lines deepening in Vincent's face, the way his shoulders sagged when no one was watching. Late that night, she found him in the living room, staring at nothing. "You're giving everything up," she said. "Yes." "For me?" she asked. "For me," Vincent replied. "And for you." She sat beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his presence. "I don't know what happens after this," she said. "With us." Vincent nodded. "Neither do I." "But you're trying," she said. "Yes." That was enough, for now. Outside, the world continued spinning, indifferent to redemption. Vincent Moretti had spent his life believing power was protection. Now, stripped of both, he felt something unfamiliar, peace, fragile and uncertain, and for the first time, worth defending. The reckoning did not arrive with sirens or headlines. It came quietly, the way consequences always did when they were real. Vincent Moretti stood in an empty office overlooking the river, the same office where the news had first reached him days earlier. The desk was bare now. No screens, no files, no locked drawers. He had stripped the room of anything that suggested permanence. Outside, the water moved steadily south, indifferent to what men decided above it. Frank Delaney entered without knocking, as he always had. This time he carried nothing. No tablet, no reports, just himself. "It's done," Frank said. "What's left is either absorbed or exposed. No one's using your name anymore." Vincent nodded. "Good." Frank studied him, searching for something. "You could still stop this," he said. "Walk back into the shadows. Someone else would take the blame." Vincent shook his head. "That's not how this ends." Frank exhaled slowly. "I've followed you a long time. I know. This is the first time I don't know if you're right." Vincent looked at him, then really looked at him. "You stayed because I never lied to you," Vincent said. "I'm not starting now." Frank held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then this is goodbye." "Yes," Vincent said. Frank extended his hand. Vincent took it, the grip firm, final. Frank turned and left without another word. The door closed softly behind him. Vincent allowed himself a single breath. The meeting with federal authorities took place that afternoon in a neutral building with no signage. No one raised their voice. No one threatened. The files on the table spoke loudly enough. Vincent answered every question without deflection, without bargaining. He offered clarity, not excuses. When it was over, the lead prosecutor leaned back in her chair. "You understand what comes next?" "Yes," Vincent said. "You'll never be charged publicly," she said. "But you'll never be free." Vincent nodded. "That's fair." He left the building alone. The final confrontation was not with the government. It was with Claire. She waited for him in the safe house living room, standing instead of sitting, arms crossed, jaw tight. She had seen enough of the world in a short time to recognize when someone was preparing to leave. "You're going somewhere," she said. "Yes." "Not a meeting," she said. "An ending." Vincent didn't deny it. "I won't be part of your life the way a father should," he said. "But I won't be a danger to it either." Her eyes glistened, anger flickering beneath the surface. "You don't get to decide that alone." "I do," Vincent said softly. "This is the last thing I can give you." She took a step toward him. "You saved me," she said. "You changed everything." "I corrected one mistake," Vincent replied. "I can't erase the rest." Claire's voice broke. "I didn't ask you to disappear." Vincent felt the words land like a blade. He closed his eyes briefly. "If I stay," he said, "the past follows. It always does." Silence stretched between them, heavy and unyielding. Finally, Claire spoke again. "If you go," she said, "it's not forgiveness." Vincent met her gaze. "I wouldn't accept it." "It's not goodbye either," she continued. "It's a boundary." Vincent felt something in his chest loosen. "That's more than I expected." She stepped forward and placed the silver pendant in his hand. "Keep it," she said, "so you remember what you chose." Vincent closed his fingers around it. "I won't forget." They stood there, close but not touching, the space between them no longer hostile, simply unfinished. That night, Vincent left Washington without an escort, without ceremony. He drove south, then west, until cities thinned into stretches of road where the past felt smaller. He stopped at a coastal town just before dawn, the ocean dark and endless before him. He walked along the shore as the sun rose, the horizon bleeding color into the sky. For the first time in his life, no one was waiting for instructions. No one depended on him to be ruthless. His phone vibrated once. A message from an unknown number. "She's asking about you," not with anger. Vincent stared at the screen for a long time. He typed a reply, erased it, then typed again. "Tell her I'm proud of her." He slipped the phone into his pocket and faced the water. The world had not forgiven him, it never would, but it had given him something he had never believed he deserved. A future, not built on fear. Vincent Moretti did not recognize freedom at first. For most of his life, freedom had been a concept used by other people. Politicians spoke about it in speeches. Criminals claimed it while breaking laws. Powerful men pretended they possessed it while being chained to decisions they could never undo. Vincent had never trusted the word. In his world, freedom was a liability. It made men careless. It made them visible. So when the mornings on the coast arrived without urgency, without threat, without calculation, Vincent initially mistook the sensation for danger. He woke before dawn out of habit, his body still trained to expect interruption. For weeks, he lay still in bed, listening for sounds that never came. No footsteps, no engines, no coded vibrations from a phone demanding his attention. Only the wind pushing gently against the house and the steady, indifferent rhythm of the ocean beyond the cliffs. It took time to understand that nothing was missing. Something had ended. The house itself was modest, weathered by salt and years of wind. Vincent had chosen it deliberately. He could have afforded more. Comfort had never been difficult for him to obtain, but excess felt wrong now, almost offensive. He wanted walls that creaked slightly at night, windows that carried the smell of the sea, floors that reminded him he was grounded in something real. Each morning, he brewed coffee slowly. Not because he enjoyed the taste more than before, but because there was no reason to rush. For decades, every moment had been optimized, every pause had been a risk. Now, time no longer demanded obedience. That frightened him more than any enemy ever had. The world he had dismantled did not disappear quietly. It collapsed in stages, the way structures always did when the supports were removed one by one. Vincent followed the aftermath from a distance, never inserting himself, never interfering. Court documents surfaced. Assets were seized. Names that had once commanded fear were reduced to text on screens, stripped of mystique and influence. Miguel Rojas appeared briefly in the news, escorted into a courthouse with his head down, thinner than Vincent remembered. His arrogance finally starved out of him. There was no dramatic sentencing, no moment of satisfaction, just inevitability. Vincent felt no triumph. He also felt no mercy. Justice, he had learned, did not require emotional participation. It did not need applause. It did not ask permission. It simply corrected imbalance and moved on, indifferent to how many lives it rearranged in the process. Frank Delaney never called again. That silence carried meaning, but not regret. Frank had stayed until the end of the man Vincent used to be. He had known when loyalty meant standing beside someone, and when it meant stepping away so they could finish a transformation alone. Vincent respected that. He hoped Frank found peace in whatever came next. Work filled Vincent's days now. He repaired boats for fishermen who spoke little and watched carefully. He liked that kind of trust, earned through consistency rather than fear. The work demanded patience. Wood cracked honestly. Metal bent or resisted. There were no lies in materials, no negotiations, no manipulation. When a boat returned to the water, it either held or it failed. Responsibility was immediate. People in the harbor called him Vince. Some assumed he had been military. Others guessed he had lost someone important. No one pressed for details. In a town like this, privacy was not a luxury. It was a mutual agreement. At night, when exhaustion loosened his defenses, the past arrived. Not violently, not theatrically. It came as memory always did when a man stopped running. Faces resurfaced, rooms reconstructed themselves in his mind, decisions replayed without justification. Vincent did not argue with these memories. He did not rewrite them to soften the edges. He allowed them to exist exactly as they were. He had learned that guilt only became poisonous when it was denied. The letter arrived on an afternoon that looked like any other. Vincent recognized the handwriting immediately. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time before opening it, the envelope resting beneath his fingers as if it carried weight beyond paper. Claire's words were careful, precise, written by someone who was no longer surviving moment to moment, but reflecting. She wrote about therapy sessions that left her exhausted in ways fear never had, about how safety did not feel like relief at first, but like standing in open space after years underground, unsure where to step. She wrote about her father, how his certainty had cracked, how silence had replaced command, how power looked smaller now when stripped of illusion. She did not accuse. She did not absolve. She simply told the truth. "I don't know what you are to me yet," she wrote, "but I know you didn't disappear this time, and that matters more than you think." Vincent folded the letter slowly and placed it in the drawer beside the pendant. For decades, he had told himself that absence was protection. That walking away was mercy. Now he understood it had been fear dressed up as sacrifice. He did not answer immediately. When he finally wrote back weeks later, his response was stripped of defense. "I am here, and I am proud of you." The president never contacted him again. That silence was deliberate. Their final conversation had drawn a boundary neither intended to cross. Vincent understood that the protection he had been granted was not forgiveness. It was containment. A quiet agreement that some men were better removed from history's official narrative. Vincent accepted that without resentment. He had lived long enough inside power to understand its limits. Months passed. The phone call came on an evening when the ocean was calm and the sky carried the color of steel. Vincent answered before the second ring. "It's me," Claire said. He closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself in her voice. "I know." She told him about a conference on the coast, about how she had almost chosen another city, about how avoidance no longer felt like growth. "I don't expect anything," she said. "I just want to see." Vincent chose his words carefully. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm calling." When the day came, Vincent arrived early at the cafe by the harbor. He sat where he could see the door without watching it obsessively. When Claire walked in, he stood instinctively, not from obligation, but respect. She looked different. Not untouched, not healed completely, but present. They greeted each other without ceremony. No embrace, no distance. Something balanced, fragile and real. They spoke about ordinary things first. The town, the ocean, her work. Vincent listened more than he spoke. He resisted the urge to explain himself, understanding that explanations often served the speaker more than the listener. Later they walked along the shoreline, shoes in hand, letting the cold water wash over their feet. The wind moved around them without urgency. At one point, Claire stopped and faced him. "You changed," she said. "Yes," Vincent replied. "So did I." The words settled between them, not demanding resolution. As the sun lowered, Claire reached into her pocket and placed something in his palm. The second pendant. "I don't need it anymore," she said. "You can keep it. Not as ownership. Just continuity." Vincent closed his fingers around it slowly. "Thank you," he said. They parted without sadness. That night, Vincent sat alone on the porch, the ocean stretching endlessly before him. He held both pendants in his hand for a long time. For decades they had symbolized absence, fear, and failure. Now they symbolized choice. He slipped one around his neck. Not as absolution, as acceptance. Vincent Moretti had not been redeemed in the way stories preferred. He had not paid for his past in a way that balanced any moral scale. He had simply chosen to stop running, and sometimes that was the hardest choice of all. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.